Hello and welcome back to the Kratom Sobriety Podcast. This is a special Wednesday episode. My name is Nolan. I'm one of your hosts, and I am here with a special guest, John. How are you today, John?
I'm doing fantastic.
Great. John came on today as he's working on a special project. John, would you mind telling us a bit about what it is you're working on, a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So my full name is John Bachner, and like Nolan said, I am working on a documentary regarding the rise of a new synthetic opiate related to kratom called 7-OH. You may have heard about it at home. It is found in many smoke shops across the country, and it's basically a metabolite of traditional kratom that has severe effects on the human body. Public awareness around this substance and its rising popularity needed to be addressed, and I wanted to make a film that possibly could get the word out a little bit more than it already was.
That's great to hear. And so, what drew you to the subject? How did you learn about Kratom and 7OH?
So, 7-OH in particular, I got started by accident, to be honest. Throughout my entire life, I have been interested in kratom. I've dabbled in it every now and again. I would do it maybe once a month or so, and I always found it okay. I never really loved it. I thought that it was something that I would do if I had access to nothing better. One day, about a year ago, I went to a smoke shop and they told me they had this new kratom product called 7OH. I'm not supposed to use specific brand names, so I won't do that. But it was a 7OH pill, and I remember I took it. I was on my computer and my eyes rolled back in my head and I basically fell asleep while awake. I was just staring at the ceiling in like utter bliss for 5 hours. It was exactly like opiates. It's about as powerful as traditional painkillers. In fact, it has 30 times the binding potency to the opiate receptors than morphine. So it is something that is absolutely capable of getting you as high as heroin, basically. So I did that. A smarter man than me would have probably gotten scared off at that point and taken a couple big steps back, but I obviously loved it. It felt so good that I couldn't keep my eyes open, so I was curious, and everything that I could find online told me that it wasn't addictive, it's just kratom, just super powered kratom. I was like, "This is too good to be true," and obviously ended up being way too good to be true. About 4 months later, I tried to get off it, and anyone who has any experience with opiates will know the classic opiate withdrawal symptoms, the sleepless nights, the rapidly fluctuating internal temperature, the sense of dread that overwhelms you. And I had to eat my take the responsibility for I had done and pay the price. So I got off of it and I was just so amazed. Like this drug that put me through a very traditional opiate experience has zero awareness around it, has zero legislation regulating it, and basically nobody that I know is even aware of it. Even my friends who are more like quote unquote druggy had never heard of this. And I imagine that many people across the country are stumbling into this drug every day, especially as it becomes more and more profitable. But I can go into that later.
That would be great. And 7OH and Kratom are products you can find in commercially available in gas stations or smoke shops. And I believe it's state dependent. The purchasing age is 18. So you were mentioning a little bit about its potency as it compares to traditional opioids. How potent is 7OH compared to other common, well known drugs in terms of maybe receptor binding and analgesic effects and things like that, if you can touch on that?
There's two, when you're talking about how neurotransmitters bind to receptors in the brain, I am not an expert, but I found that there are two major metrics that you can use to determine this. One of them is to what extent is it an agonist? So an agonist is something that when it does bind to the opiate receptor, it triggers it to its full potential and the opiate receptor fully fires and fully releases that effect upon the brain. The other aspect of it that is important is the binding efficacy, which is how easily it binds to the receptor in the first place. So I like to think of it as, let's just say, a key to a house, like a key that has high binding efficiency will get into any house, but then when it has a very strong agonist properties, it will burn the entire house down, whereas something that's only a partial agonist will only mess up things a little bit. A misleading, I would say, study that a lot of pro 7-OH activists cite is that 7-OH is only a partial agonist to the mu opiate receptor specifically. The opiate receptors have three different types. There's mu, tau, and rhoda, I believe. I might be wrong on that last one, but the tau and rhoda, if that's what it is, basically have no effects on the body. They have minor analgesic effects, but all major opiate products target the mu receptors, as does kratom. So these are result in the euphoric effects and the pain management, and also responsible for many of the unintended side effects, such as lowering your testosterone, drying out the mucous membranes in the nose and in the throat and in your stomach, hence the digestive distress. But anyway, like I was saying, 7-OH is only a partial agonist towards the mu opiate receptors, which are the ones that matter, whereas traditional opiates are full agonists. But the thing that those activists do not mention is that the binding efficacy of 7-OH is 30 to 40 times stronger than even Oxycontin. So these things are bind significantly better than even heroin itself, morphine itself in its purified form. So that extreme difference, 30 times binding efficacy, outweighs the 75%. It's only 75% the agonist that traditional opiates is. So when they say it's only a partial agonist, that means that it's only 75% as strong once it binds, but it's 30 to 40 times more likely to bind. So you do the math in your head. So that's something that I feel is a pretty strong misconception. And anyone who's done it will know for themselves that this is so much stronger than traditional kratom, so much stronger than any legal drug that is out there, and is very similar to the painkillers of yesteryear, like back in the day, like the oxys and the Percocets.
Definitely. So you mentioned that you had some experience coming off of it yourself. And I know that
Mm.
as a part of this project, you're probably very familiar with a lot of the stories out there of people coming off of 7-OH and their experience with withdrawal and how it compares to traditional opioid withdrawal. Can you shed a little light on what your research has come up with when it comes to the withdrawal symptoms and what you're seeing and what you yourself have felt?
Absolutely. So I would say that opiate withdrawal, including 7-OH, and to an extent traditional kratom, has two major phases. You have the acute phase and what the recovery community calls post-acute withdrawal stage or pause. For the acute phase, depending on the half-life of the substance, which is how long it takes for half of your body to expel the substance. Certain substances have very long half-lives. Like buprenorphine, I believe, it's up to a week. Like things that they give you to help quit and do extended tapers, like things you can get from your doctor, have very long half-lives. Methadone, in comparison to those drugs, 7-OH has a very short half-life. It's 3 to 4 hours. So luckily, the chronic phase is relatively short, and by relatively short, 2 to 3 days from what I've heard from people mention. And this just includes all those things I mentioned earlier: extreme cravings, inability to sleep, muscle soreness, like itchy feelings deep inside your body, just like a deep sense of unease and the desire to just make it all go away and go to your local gas station and get some more to take the pain away, help you get some sleep. The difference between 7-OH and something like heroin is, I would argue, it is much harder to prevent yourself from taking the pain away when there are literally 6 stores within 2 miles of you that sell it for cheap. $20 to finally get some sleep. You're trying to quit, but you have an important paper tomorrow. You have an important obligation for work. You need to sleep, right? So how would it hurt for me to just take this pill, get some sleep, and then I'll try to quit tomorrow? And then it just keeps going and going. Before you know it, you've lost 6 months. So I would say that quitting, the biggest hurdle is definitely that initial stage. It's going to be 2 to 3 days of suck, for lack of a better word. You're going to have to put up with the lack of sleep. You're going to have to distract yourself. You're probably going to want to take a lot of hot showers, and go for a lot of walks because sitting still is going to feel like agony. There's going to be restless leg syndrome for a lot of people, which is basically where your legs just are so antsy that you can't stop bouncing them. Things like that. It's just like very uncomfortable physically. And then once you move beyond that phase, there is the second period, which is known as pause. And that is something that is a little bit less well understood by the medical community, but it basically is more of your traditional depression. It's feeling a sense of malaise, not being very motivated, low levels of energy. Something that's interesting about 7-OH specifically is in all of these papers, the effects of 7-OH on the opiate receptors and even the dopamine receptors are very well understood. 7-OH is also very active on the dopamine receptors. You will find yourself having a sort of stimulant high in small amounts, exact same as kratom. Small amounts, you typically the dopamine high is the major feeling, and then you take more, and then the opiates start to overpower it, and you start to go to sleep. But when you quit 7-OH, you are severely insensitive to dopamine. You are insensitive to opiates and even serotonin to a smaller extent. The same things that are believed by some in the medical community to cause anxiety and depression, 7-OH does act on the serotonin receptors, and it is unique in that amongst these opiates and all these different variations of kratom, it does have limited serotonin agonist properties. So you are even going to be going through a minor serotonin withdrawal as well, and with that comes anxiety and depression, all of that sort of stuff. This can control it if you eat healthy, if you sleep properly, if you get a lot of exercise, get all of your natural receptors in a way that is healthy. Exercising releases natural opiate in the brain, and getting work done releases dopamine in the body. All these things can accelerate the speed at which your brain recovers from these literal structural changes that it needs to make to adapt to the huge amounts of pleasure chemicals you're bombing it with. So it takes time for the brain to shape back. The older you are, the longer it'll take because the brain gets less plastic with age. That could last weeks to months, depending on how healthy you are. And that is another major period when people relapse, for
That's all
sure.
very
It's
good information. And yeah, we can touch on relapsing later. This is all great advice and information for either quitters of 7-OH, whether that be extracts or pills, or otherwise kratom quitters, people who are using powder, not in any concentrate form, because there is, I think, a general application between both sides. So thanks for all of that. What I'm very curious about is your upcoming project that you've been working on. For all the listeners out there, John is working on a documentary about 7-OH. So let's talk a bit about that. So what do you hope to be the kind of central takeaway or message of the documentary?
two things. I want to firstly give people a chance to tell their stories. I think that I am the type of person who believes that human beings should be allowed to make their own decisions, but it is extraordinarily important that they have the information necessary to make those decisions. And it is manipulative and frankly abusive to offer people substances and put people in scenarios where they have to make decisions without all the facts, without the chance to talk it over with other people. And that is why I want to really focus on telling people's stories in this documentary. I have interviewed probably 30 to 40 people thus far, just people who have very similar to me taken it up, tried it, realized at a certain point that they wanted to put it down again, and that they couldn't. Some people were better at it than others. It just depends. Like some people were very motivated to quit right away, and some people, similar to me, let the cycle go on for a couple months where you just keep pushing back the quit date, keep pushing back the quit date. And I empathize with those people a lot because it took a hell of a lot for me to quit fully. So I just want to tell people the stories, fight back at kind of misleading papers you can see online, especially the ones that say have zero abusive potential, which is schizophrenic to me. Like that is just completely misunderstanding reality and is coming from people who have never tried it. If they say it has no abuse potential, if it doesn't
Yeah,
have
I
abuse
think
potential,
that's a
heroin doesn't have abuse potential.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that's a very poor use of scientific literature to deny the stories and lived experiences of all of the people who have gone through what you went through and what all these people you're interviewing. So what kind of stories highlighting? Who are you interviewing? Are you interviewing past users, families, doctors?
I have talked to a ton of users and also a state representative from Florida regarding the politics around this drug, and I am in the process of putting together an interview with a couple of professors from University of Miami, which is my local university. I'm from based out of Miami, Florida. And yeah, I think that in the documentary, I want to show the traditional trajectory of users. A lot of them have chronic pain. A lot of them are relatively young and have desperate need for effective pain control and stumbled across this thing and found that it was amazing, too good to be true, and then inevitably it turns out some things are a little bit too good to be true. It is extremely effective at curbing pain. That is something it is very good at, as are all opiates. But if you hyperfixate on that one benefit, it can lose the forest for the trees in terms of what it's doing to your life, what it does to your relationships. I've talked to people who have stolen things from family members to pay for it. I've talked to people who have lost their jobs, and this one really scared me. They were infertile, and they think it was because of the 7-OH, because the 7 interrupts the body's natural production of testosterone in men. Many people who do 7-OH and traditional opiates will see reduced testicular mass, like their balls will shrink, and their sperm count will decrease. And for some people, you can bounce back from that, but for some people, you can't. So this person is, after doing 7-OH for I believe it was 7 or 8 months, is probably not gonna be able to have kids now, and I think that is among the things that could happen to you, one of the most tragic. So, just hearing people's stories, why they do it, what happened to them when they did, and just how it affected their lives. In terms of the politician, something else that I wanted to address in the documentary, I wanted to talk about people's life experiences with the drug. I wanted to talk about the political movements that are happening right now to battle it out over the what is allowed to be done with this drug. And lastly, I wanted to talk about the science. So, in terms of the politics, it's quite interesting. There are many groups who are lobbyists for traditional kratom, such as the AKA, which is the American Kratom Association, and I'm sure that the viewers know of a couple others, but they are spending very big money to squash 7-OH in the crib. I believe I read that it was $30 million a year, and they are hugely successful. Already in 14 states, it has been effectively banned. Like they have the same law. The lobbyist groups have the same law that they submit to every state government, and then the state government, when they go through their review process and the debate process, they make small edits. But in substance, all the major points are the same, and the takeaway is 2% limit on 7 in kratom products. So it is limited to 2% of the total concentration, which is good. I think that when you do kratom, it naturally breaks down into 7-OH in your body already. So completely removing 7-OH from the picture is impossible, but limiting it to 2% is a step in the right direction for sure, and will go a long way to reducing the addictive effects of these products. Um, I am in
Definitely. Yeah.
Florida. They're gonna Yeah, absolutely. And I'm in Florida. They have a bill in the state legislature right now, HB 1789, I believe, and it is going to go into effect starting July 1st. So no more 7-OH extracts. Now, the thing that I think is very interesting is already this drug is only a year old. I don't know how familiar you are with smoke shop weed analogs or whatever, but you have marijuana, and in order to circumvent federal bans, they make a molecular change to THC, and they'll move a carbon atom, one atom to the right in the molecular chain, and it'll be completely new substance, and it'll be completely legal. So delta 8 is one of those. The 8 is the position where the carbon atom is in the molecular change. So before it's delta 9, now it's delta 8, one to the left. Completely legal. You can get high on it in Florida. The same exact thing is happening with this drug already. They are already hard at work producing chemical analogs to these substances because they are so profitable. In 1 year, I've talked to 4 smoke shop owners, and every single one of them said that within the last year, it has become one of their most popular products, especially when you consider it in price. In quantity, people still like marijuana, but in terms of how much money they're making off of it, the people who buy it a lot and they're willing to spend any amount of money on it because it makes you desperate. So it is a huge profit driver for these companies, and they will do a lot of things to keep it on the shelves.
They certainly will. And I think that's one thing that I really wanted to talk to you about is how this product is, how you see it marketed, how you've seen it presented, and the demographics that you see it marketed to. Before we get into that, I know that a large part of Kratom and its marketing and its sales departments are focusing on the idea of it as this kind of organic green leaf that is a product of the ground and will naturally and seamlessly integrate into your life as a product of nature. So I'm very curious to hear your perspective on the marketing tactics that are used, whether or not you think they're misleading, and what you hope to either say in your documentary or have been thinking about doing to regulate that misleading advertising.
It's interesting that you mentioned that because honestly, I think that their strategy is to fly as far under the radar as possible. I've never seen advertising for it. I think they rely 100% on people coming in, getting hooked on it, and then just quietly, literally silently suffering, and they bank on them being so embarrassed of being addicts that they won't tell anyone. I think that's why it's so unknown, because these people get addicted, they're so embarrassed about it, they won't even tell their family and friends. Personally didn't tell any of my loved ones until the very end. So I imagine that part of the reason why this is so unknown is a huge amount of people are suffering in silence and are humiliated by the fact they let themselves get hooked by something that is supposed to be kratom. People don't This is gonna sound bear with me. People don't respect a kratom addiction. They look at you and they say, "Is that really like, what is that? I've never heard of that." Like, I've heard of alcoholism, I've heard of heroin addiction, but if they knew how serious and how much of a effect this has on your life and how desperate people get, I think people would have a more respectful view of this medical health crisis. It truly is that.
I agree
So,
with your
back to your
perspective, and
point.
that's one that I haven't actually heard mentioned before, and I think you hit the nail right on the head. It is something that appears to fly very far under the radar. And aside from a very popular Kratom Kava tonic blend that's been rushing through the market with blue bottles, I think that advertising is pretty close to minimal because, like you said, people go into the shop and the next thing they know, they are addicted. And the only way to get it is to go back to the store. Anyway, continue.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. And I was just gonna say, wait, where was I? Yeah, like, in terms of legislation around this, I think that it is a very tricky question to ask because on one hand, it is a very effective pain reliever, and in basically every way, it is more healthy than OxyContin. So the fact that OxyContin even exists at all is insane, and it is redundant, and it should go. In my opinion, I think that the only place that this drug should have in society is as a strongly regulated, prescribed medical remedy for pain, if that. The fact that it is allowed to be front and center in every gas station, at least around where I am, is crazy to me. I think I forgot to mention this is important and another argument that proponents use, and I would be painting too negative of a picture if I didn't say this. 7-OH does not activate the beta arrestin pathway in the brain, which is to say it does not cause respiratory depression. Other than that, I guess that's like about the best thing I can say about it. Yeah, people say that it's safe. It's not safe. It causes hormonal imbalances and you to not eat and for you to be dependent on a drug that costs $30 per pack and people buy 3 packs a day. So that's $60 a day. Very easily could get that high.
Yeah, and
So is it
the definition of safe is very much what we make it. So if we think that
yeah.
safe is considered non-lethal, sometimes it's useful to look a bit farther. Is it safe to your life circumstances? Do you want to be spending all of this money? Do you want digestive issues? Do you want potentially severe dependency on something that you're taking to keep you normal? I think I think you opened a great door for discussion there. And lastly, one thing I wanted to say about what you said is one of the reasons that I like your approach is because it is good for pain. And I think that pain management systems are, of course, there are many out there. Some are worse than others, some are better than others. And I do like your idea of using it as a pain management system post regulation.
Absolutely. Yeah, it does have a use, and I think if we could get to the point where no one was dying of opiate overdoses, that'd be fantastic. Because 'cause I'm telling you, as a user, this drug gets you as high as oxy. So it will get your pain gone, so it is very effective. There's no reason for OxyContin to exist anymore, but I think that it should fill the be in the same regulatory bucket as OxyContin is currently. I think that pharmacies shouldn't be able to give it out willy-nilly. In Florida, you're currently allowed, I think you can only get a 3-day prescription in Florida post-surgery. That's at all. So you're barely allowed to get it unless you have, you're very elderly and it's terminal illness that you're dealing with. But I think that doctors should not be able to telehealth prescribe it like we've seen with many drugs that you can just go online and get crazy amounts of crazy things. I think it should be in-person doctors talking to you, making sure that the conservative medical approaches are used. But I think it does have a place. Is that place in gas stations? No. And that's hopefully where this legislation leads. I think that I am very optimistic that these Kratom initiatives, like these lobbyist groups, they seem fairly effective in getting this out of the shelves. Whether or not that gets it off the streets is another question, but that remains to be seen. I just think that it's crazy to what extent this can affect your body, and people just need to know. People just need to know.
I think it's a very noble cause you've chosen, and especially the media in which you've chosen to show it. I think that documentary style content is always very good at condensing a very complicated issue and turning it into something that's palatable and change worthy. So how did you so what's your background in filmmaking, or how did you decide on this?
It's funny you say that. I have never made a film before. I have a history in journalism. When I was in college, I have written a number of political pieces, mostly just talking about local politics and about like just the goings on of the university that I went to, and just really low level journalism. Really, I'd never made a movie before, especially not about drugs. And I've always wanted to make a documentary. I've always been really interested in things like Vice and the types of things that kind of went under the mainstream and really looked at counterculture and subcultures. Because you can go online and find a huge community of dedicated 708 fans. They're out there. They are extremely protective of their baby, and they will fight you on the internet. I have had a
Yeah,
lot
that
of
was going to be
trouble
one of my
recruiting.
questions. Yeah, is how much, if any, pushback have you found from pro users, and what's your
I'll say
perspective?
this. I don't know I don't know how, like, familiar you are with Reddit or, like,
Very,
that website. Like,
very.
my initial method was to go and try to recruit people on Reddit. It's, like, my
Oh,
whole brilliant idea. Yeah, so I would go
oh
to all the
no.
major subreddits or whatever and post it, and I got, at this point, 6 accounts banned, like,
Wow.
permanently banned.
Wow. Yeah, that's
I'm not
one
kidding.
way to go directly into the hornet's nest, John.
Yeah, no, I didn't realize because what happened is I told them all, "I am making a documentary that I hope will be relatively unbiased. If you have a perspective that 7OH dramatically helps you, the only way that people can hear about this is if you talk on my documentary. So I will give you a voice. Like, I will not push I will not fight you on this. If you think it's a good thing, go ahead." But funnily enough, paradoxically enough, the only people who wanted to talk to me were the people who were very pro quitting, very pro recovery, and every single subreddit that was extremely pro 7OH immediately labeled me a lobbyist or a nefarious actor who was trying to bait and switch people into a predatory interview, and they they came after me. They I got probably 50 DMs from all these crazy people. insulting me even though they don't know me. So that didn't hurt. What hurt was that I was trying to recruit people and my accounts got banned, so that made the process a whole lot slower.
That's such
But
a shame,
it
but
is
good
what
for
it is.
you for making 5 more. That takes a lot of willpower. Man,
Yeah, I mean, it is good too because it helps you quit Reddit. Because now forevermore, if I try to create a new account, it's gonna get banned within 2 days, so I'll never be addicted ever again.
it's easy to get addicted to Reddit.
I know, I'm right there with you. I've been using it my entire life,
Oh,
probably for the
man.
best.
It's better than being addicted to 708, she'll tell you that much. So,
Yeah.
let's go, where will we see this come out? Where are you hoping to land it? Are you looking to go through YouTube, a network, or what's your plan?
As of right now, the immediate plan is YouTube, but we are actually speaking to actual producers and distributors, which is surreal. As I said, this is my first movie, so the fact that it's potentially getting distributed is nuts. That remains to be seen. I'm working with a professional film producer to make this happen, and I'm so blessed that he took interest in this and that he related to the subject matter. Hopefully, knock on wood, you may see this at a festival near you. We'll see.
That would be fantastic. I really look forward to seeing it. Do you have a title for it yet?
That's a great question. I honestly
Title's the
haven't
hard,
thought
yeah.
about it at all.
Title's the hardest
Um,
part. I always write the
that
titles of my books at the end.
yeah, no, I feel like in my opinion, just like the way I viewed it, it's like I don't wanna jinx it by giving it a name yet. I barely tell anyone in my personal life about it. Like, I just wanna keep going and going until, like, I have it, and then I'll name it and tell people about it, and it'll be an amazing feeling. But until then, tight lips.
I love that approach. And also, if you're telling people about it in your life, I find that not telling them about it is extra motivation. It gives you more, I don't know but it puts more gas in your tank, because if you tell someone that you've written a book before you've written the book, that takes all the fun out of telling people.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
completely agree. Just, keeping it close to my body, but absolutely, you will be one of the first people to know once it's released. I'll send you the link and everything. It'll be awesome.
Oh, please. Yeah. And then because I know that this is probably something you need support with, is there, how can people get involved and support the cause either before watching or after watching?
Absolutely. So, if you wanna support the cause, very specifically, to fight 7OH, the best way is to write your local congressman. People undervalue the role of local governments and state governments, but what I've seen from researching this is what generally happens. No one gives a hoot about what happens at their state and local level, and then these bills just barrel through, and no one even knows that it happened. And the next thing you know, something life changing potentially has happened, and no one knew that was gonna happen, no one asked for it, but it did. So these people will listen to you. Very few people email them, especially about something that isn't crazy. This isn't crazy. They will respect your opinion. So email your local state rep, and I believe if enough people do that, you can see some serious change. Absolutely.
Are you looking for
I
any more people to interview, or are you wrapping up with your interviews?
We will always take more people to interview. The more, the better. I want to hear everybody's story. And it is very important to me that people get the chance to talk about how this substance has affected them or a loved one, or even just hear their opinions about it and get your take on what should be done in society about this. I think that the problem thus far, like I've said before, is that nobody knows about it. I think that people have the right to know the facts and the experiences surrounding this before they decide to jump in themselves. So I think if you reach out to me and I can get an interview with you, you could potentially change someone's life, honestly. That guy can't have kids anymore because of a small decision. And if he had potentially had someone warn him, things could be radically different for him. And he is not alone. There are thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who are trying this and are actively using it right now. So if you want to put your story out there or share your opinions, if you email me, I will get back to you quickly and I will schedule an interview with you soon and we can get it done working within your time frame. And if you are potentially worried about privacy concerns, there's no need for your face to be included. We can do a voice only interview. Anything works. I've talked to so many people at this point, and I would love to talk to you at home as well. So please reach out. That is John, John, M as in Michael, Bachner, Bachner @gmail.com.
John, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a fantastic discussion, and I look forward so much to seeing this come to life. And it's a fantastic thing you're doing. So, to all the listeners out there, get in touch with John if you're curious about his project. And we very much look forward to a title, though there's no pressure. Yeah, but is there anything else you wanted to say to the listeners before we say goodbye?
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate all the work that you guys are doing for the community. I think creating something like this in a world where people can feel alone is doing immeasurable good. And just the amount of effort you guys put in, the amount of time that you dedicated, and the consistency that you put into it is really impressive. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John.